Okay, here we are. It's been a little after the Super Bowl since we did the football podcast, Tim.
Yeah.
I realize now I need to get my browser open. Talk a little bit about some coaching and some free agency.
Yeah. Get out the old ESPN to see what's going on. I don't know why we started already if we're looking up stuff.
Well, buddy, I feel bad, but okay. Actually, we've got it. Okay. All right, we've got it. Let's first touch base, Tim, on our thoughts on the coaching because we haven't talked about that yet too much. So the New England. So one thing I will point out that is pretty interesting is only the. Let me double check this. Yes, only the Patriots and the Raiders picked former head coaches. All the other teams that hired, and we'll talk about in a minute, are all first-time head coaches. Kind of wild, huh? Only two previous.
Who'd they get? Mike Vrabel. Okay,
Yep.
He was out last year, right? We talked about that. How we were pretty surprised no team had actually picked him up, or was that his choice? I can't remember.
I don't think there was an opening that he really wanted. He was coaching at. I'm probably gonna get the college wrong, but I think he went to a college like Arizona State or something. Took a position last year and did that. But New England goes out and gets Mike Vrabel. Makes a lot of sense for him.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought they would do that last year instead of promote Gerard Mayo, but they give Mayo 1 year.
That does suck.
Boot him and then grab Mike Vrabel, which I'm hearing some people think that like they're just kind of doing what the fans maybe want or everybody expected him to do, but I think Vrabel's probably a good fit to at least get them back on track.
Oh yeah, for sure. But just imagine like inheriting kind of a team that is. I mean, you could probably fairly say it's in the middle of a rebuild, and then getting 1 year, getting 1 year to do anything with it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it sucks for Gerard Mayo, but I mean Mike Vrabel's a solid coach.
Yep. So, yeah, I like that hire. I thought they should have done it last year. I don't have too much more to say about that. Now, how do you feel about Ben Johnson staying in the division and going to the Chicago Bears? You starting to get nervous about the Bears?
No. No, it's just they're making good moves. Like, they put a lot of work into the line already, too, I've seen.
Well.
It's just until, like, I see it happen.
Yeah.
Because this has been the thing. Is like Bears win the offseason every year. and then it just crashes and burns. They're making the right moves. They've got to build a team around Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams had too high of expectations. I mean, he'd had a solid year. But
well, it's up and
he had a solid year with what he had to work with, too. You saw some potential. Like,
yeah, hopefully, yeah.
So,
Ben Johnson's probably the right guy to. If anybody's probably going to get him on track, Ben should be able to do it, I think. But
yeah, they'll probably keep going in the right direction. But like I said, until I see something happening, the Bears aren't really a threat in that division to me.
Yeah, but it is, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we kind of look over some of the free agents. But it is Ben Johnson. First thing he did was go out and start addressing offensive line, which
is huge.
Yeah, well, plus for the offense he runs, they've got to have a decent offensive line. I mean, think about the Lions' offensive line. That pretty much allows them to do everything that they want to do. So that's obviously pretty smart, I think, on Ben, or at least what I call an indicator that Ben Johnson's going to do some of the right things by going out and immediately addressing offensive line. New York Jets bring Aaron Glenn in, who was drafted
before
by
we
the Jets.
quick side note.
Yep.
No, it's kind of staying with Aaron Glenn going. Before we kind of dive in there, how big of an impact do you think losing the OC and DC is going to be for the Lions and Dan Campbell?
I think that it's going to
and losing them at the same time.
Yeah, they're a very talented team, so they're probably going to still be pretty competitive, but I tend to wonder if this isn't going to look a little bit like the Eagles 2 years ago.
Might take a year to get it kind of fine-tuned again.
Yep. They're going to win because they're talented. They're probably still going to beat teams that they should beat, but they may struggle a little bit more than they have.
And they should at some point. Shouldn't they get Hutchinson back? It's probably like the second half of the year, but
Well, they were trying to say.
he's running and stuff and working out.
Well, they were
but-
thinking he might have been able to play in the Super Bowl. So I'm betting he's going to be
He's
back
doing
pretty
okay?
early. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
all
I
right.
think that might have been. I think that might have been a stretch, but
Oh yeah. Yeah.
they had talked like that was a possibility.
I'm sure we'll get more. I know I've seen videos of him working out so that he's healing fast. But that was just a quick question I had. They lose both those guys at the same time. That's usually
I know it's usually
a
kind
good
of
effect. But I would think it's a big pickup for the Jets.
Yep.
He's obviously a pretty established defensive coordinator. Should definitely have a shot at a head coach job.
Yeah, I do kind of want to maybe not today because we got a little bit to get through. Maybe at some point when we're looking for some content, I do kind of want to run into coordinators because there has been some pretty interesting coordinator hires, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I do not quite remember who they brought in at the Lions, but I do remember there's a couple notable coordinator hires that I think are going to be kind of interesting. Like you have Lou Anarumo. The Bengals fired him after their poor defensive season last year, which is largely because they can't afford a defense. Especially, they're going to have a real hard time affording a defense after paying Chase.
I've seen a lot of jokes about that.
And they still think they might be able to get. Oh God, why am I drawing a blank? Is it Trey Hendrickson?
I don't know.
Their defensive
That's
end.
just
They
such
think
a-
they're going to get him signed. It's like,
That's
dude, you're
just
not going
such
to
a
be able to
wild
afford anybody
move
else.
to pay those guys
I know.
like that.
It's also interesting they're represented by the same agent too.
Good on that guy. Those dudes need to give him a solid tip.
Yeah.
Give him a good
Well,
percentage.
he's doing well. It's usually about 3% of each contract. So,
Well,
Um,
he's taking care of those boys.
but yeah, and then so Lou Anarumo, he leaves. That's kind of their scapegoat last year for their poor defensive play. But he goes to the Indianapolis Colts. So I got to tell you, I don't know how the Indianapolis Colts are going to be because they're going to have to figure out the whole Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones,
Danny Dimes,
situation. But they have a terrific coaching staff. I feel like I hope Indy doesn't bail on him, and Irsay is a little bit of a wild card. Hopefully, he doesn't bail on him because he's got two pretty good coaches to say the least in there. But so now we can move on to Aaron Glenn, who was drafted by the Jets, I believe, in like 1994.
I think you were actually telling me that.
And I think this is good for the Jets because I think at very least, like AG is going to at least kind of provide some real stability that they haven't had in a while. Now, I kind of think Robert Saleh should have been able to, but the Jets really put all their cards in the getting Aaron Rodgers here bandwagon.
They
and
did.
I think that derailed Saleh's kind of chance at keeping that stable. Because I feel like the year that Rodgers got hurt, though they weren't great and you wouldn't have expected them to be, they were you could at least see that they were relatively well coached. And then last year it turned into a fiasco, obviously. So
Yeah.
But Aaron Glenn, I mean, he already basically, we had touched on this, but he'd already kind of told Aaron Rodgers, like, if you want to come back here, you're not dicking around on the Pat McAfee show. You're not going to Egypt during OTAs. Which you got to respect AG for that a little bit because he's trying to get everybody focused on football. So I think, I don't know how good they're going to be because they have a lot of, they got some pieces, but they got a lot of stuff to sort through.
Their line still needs work.
Line still needs work. You still don't know what quarterback is. They've brought in Justin Fields, but so
He started the year solid with
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah, like he got him started strong, and
Yeah.
who knows?
Who knows?
We
We'll
can see. We can see.
I don't dislike the hire at all, though. Familiar with, played there, familiar with the organization. And like I said, he's an adult. They need an adult there to right the ship, which brings us to Pete Carroll, who I also do like for the Raiders for pretty much the same reasons that I like Aaron Glenn for the Jets a little bit, because again, they've got a lot to work out on their roster outside of Brock Bowers. I don't know who else you really like on. You've got Christian Wilkinson on the defense, and you've got Max Crosby, who just got paid. on the defense as well. But they really needed some stability, and I also think Pete Carroll's going to provide that. Now, I would say 7-win team might be like, you might feel really good about that, but they could also be a 4, 5, 6-win team.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're making the leap to a playoff team, especially with Denver and potentially the Chargers improving. But they need this type of leadership to get themselves back to being competitive.
Oh, yeah. It's a solid pickup for sure.
Yeah. And then New Orleans Saints, Kellen Moore. I don't know what to think of Kellen Moore. Won a Super Bowl as the coordinator finally with Philadelphia, who's pretty loaded on offense, though. Not super impressed with what went on in Dallas, and not overly impressed. Was not impressed at Dallas, and kind of not all that great whenever he went to the Chargers for 1 year. But granted, he was on a sinking ship there, so I don't know what to make of that 1 year at.
I don't know enough about him.
He was a former Cowboys backup quarterback. That's why the Cowboys gave him his first coordinator
Tells
job.
me everything I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just not familiar with his career.
Yeah, I mean, and the Saints are in a lot of trouble. I mean,
They're full like rebuild mode, aren't they?
Well, but the problem is they have so many issues with cap, and they've had to get rid of a lot of people, and they still have quite a few aging players that are pretty large cap hits. So I think it's going to be rough. It's going to be a rebuild, and he's going to need at least 3 years to maybe prove if he's the guy or not. I really kind of think that. I don't think New Orleans is going to be fantastic. They're keeping Derek Carr. Jacksonville Jaguars, they brought in Liam Cohen.
He came from the Bucs, didn't he?
Yes, he was the recent offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thought he would be a good pair with Trevor Lawrence because he did some pretty good work with Baker Mayfield. He took over for Byron Leftwich, I think, 2-ish years ago, whenever they moved on from him. And coordinator the last couple of years. So,
haven't they gone to the playoffs the last couple of years?
Yes, they have been. Yep.
So,
well, they've really been to the playoffs since Brady and them went there. I don't think they missed a year. I think they've.
Did they miss Brady's last year?
No, I don't think so.
Or did they just get beat fairly early?
I think they just got beat early.
Okay, all right.
Lost to Dallas, maybe? When Brandon Aubrey couldn't hit a kick, but it didn't matter. I think that was the last year of Brady, and they were a wild card team.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And then Brian Schottenheimer, who has been with the Dallas Cowboys for a while as a coordinator. Not a sexy hire. A lot of people a little disappointed in that. He's been in the league forever as various coordinators.
I just want to say that I feel for Mike McCarthy because we had this talk about how he's had like 3 or 4 12-win seasons in a row. Or it was at least 3, I think. Mm-hmm. And then they were talking about last year getting rid of him as a 12-5 team. And then you come back and you do have a down year. And they're like, that's it. Like, that sucks, man. But McCarthy's had trouble winning in the playoffs. Other than that playoff run, he's just had trouble.
Yeah.
Whether that's adjusting to making in-game adjustments, building teams around people. Mike McCarthy has just historically struggled since that Super Bowl run.
Yeah. I don't think that it sounds to me as though Mike McCarthy didn't want to go back. I
could see that too if Jerry's meddling was a part of that.
Well, what I have been hearing from a few different sources is essentially the Cowboys really only wanted to extend him for like 1 or 2 years, and he wanted more like a 5-year extension. And so they basically were saying, "Hey, we'd like to have you back. Here's some money for a year or 2." And he's just like, "No, I don't want to do that. You either want me to coach the team, or I'll find somewhere else to coach long term." Is kind of what. And they, the longer that they went not getting him signed, the more I think he was just like, I mean, you can make me an offer, but if it's not a 5-year deal, I'm not interested. And that's ultimately what I heard had went on there.
He wanted some consistency.
Yeah.
Or commitment, I guess.
Yep.
Longer term commitment.
Yep, need more time. Which, I mean, he probably knows they've got a lot of holes to fill, and they really haven't done a whole heck of a lot in free agency either. I suppose they think they're going to address in the draft. I don't remember what draft pick they are exactly, but they're not. Are they top 10? They might be
I'm
like
not sure.
top 10. They didn't win very many games, but they won enough. They're not certainly not top 5. I don't believe so. Oh, you want to jump into free agency signing a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I may not get way in the weeds on a few of these teams. Notable signings for the Buffalo Bills thus far. They did extend Josh Allen to a pretty lengthy contract. He is the highest paid, I suppose, person in the league, right? AAV. I like to point that out. But
Didn't he take? He didn't get as much as Dak, because Dak was the biggest ended up being the biggest contract last year, didn't he?
yeah, but I thought he beat Dak.
No, there was because there was an interview about how they asked him why he didn't take that much, and he was like, "It's weird to say, but like, what's an extra $5 million going to do for me?"
Yeah.
So no, I don't think he went after that. I think he was the idea and all the stuff I had kind of read or been reading was that he was trying to take a more like team friendly deal. Now, how team friendly it really is, I don't know.
Well, it's like $330 million or something, isn't it?
Over how many years though?
I don't.
It's like 5.
Hold on, I'll not do that. I don't want to do that. I want to.
Well, we can. It's not that important.
Well, sure it is. This will take 2 seconds.
Josh Allen girlfriend.
Well, fiance now.
Oh, that's right. She's Hawkeye, or the new Hawkeye. I don't know her name.
I can't remember off the top of my head either.
Kate Bishop is the character.
Signed a 6-year, 330.
6 years.
$330 million contract with Buffalo.
That's so much.
Including
$56 million signing
bonus.
Oh,
200.
God.
It's so of that 330, 250 is guaranteed.
That's so much money, dude.
Well, he's a pretty good quarterback.
Well, yeah. But I'm just saying that's a ton of money.
I know. And then they are picking some people off the pile of the Chargers, who they let go. They pick up Joshua Palmer, which actually potentially makes a lot of sense. He is a guy I think that they can utilize in their offense because he's kind of he's not like he's like a pretty quick downfield guy, and I don't feel like they've had that, to be honest with you.
No.
So
Probably
he
not
could,
fairly recently.
yeah, he's not necessarily high volume, but he has been randomly good for the Chargers at catching deep balls. So that'll probably help their offense a little bit. And then I don't know what to think about Joey Bosa. They cut Von Miller and got out to some degree from that contract.
He's getting pretty old.
Yeah, well, he still had like 3 years left on his deal or something. It was a 6-year deal, and he played 3 of it, and he was only decent for like the first year. But then they go out and sign Joey Bosa for like, and I don't have this in front of me, but I think it was like $11 million, $12 million. And I'm just not so sure Joey Bosa is going to move the needle for me on their defensive line. I mean, I'm glad that they tried to address defensive line because I don't think their defensive line is particularly fantastic, but not so sure Joey Bosa is going to revitalize that.
Got the wrong Bosa.
Yeah. Well, we're both kind of struggling a little bit. So I guess that's it major on the Buffalo Bills. I don't really guess I'm going to dive into
I guess I didn't realize Dolphins got Zach Wilson.
Yes, they did. And then that Nick Westbrook-Akina from the Titans, but he hasn't done a whole lot. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. Patriots, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Patriots. They're still they've made a lot of moves. They have a lot of cap space, but that's also because their roster's not very good. So hopefully they can put something around Drake May. So we talked about the New York Jets, but they bring in Justin Fields. And I have to assume they're still thinking about addressing quarterback, maybe in the draft. Maybe they still find somebody in free agency. Like maybe Kirk Cousins could make sense here if Atlanta's willing to deal him. It's kind of starting to look like Atlanta's just going to hang on to him.
That's what I had kind of heard too.
Yeah. I think he wants to start, though.
Of course he wants to start.
I don't
And who
think,
knows? He was just coming off that Achilles injury.
Yeah, and then did you see he also had hurt his shoulder?
No, I didn't see
Right,
that.
yes. So they did come out and admit that his shoulder had been hurt right before it went to crap on him whenever he had
That
that really
sucks.
bad game against the Chargers. And then they tried to play him another week or week and a half, and it wasn't any better. But they did admit that he had a shoulder injury he was playing through. So used to be you got in trouble whenever you weren't very forthcoming on that stuff, but now it just seems to go on like, oh yeah, by the way, he was hurt. Like, nobody cares. Pisses your gamblers off pretty regularly.
Yeah. So that's all. I was looking down below at the Ravens. Chiefs couldn't hang on to Hopkins, huh?
They did not. I think it was a matter of like, if you can go find money somewhere else, do it. If not, we'll talk about something. But it would have been pretty cheap. I mean, to bring him back. I feel bad. Like, I wish it could have gone different for DeAndre, but they brought him into Band-Aid a situation, and it kind of worked out. I mean, he helped us out in a few games or whatever, but he was pretty much non-existent by the end of the year in the playoffs. So, but he also had a knee injury that, maybe he's going to be a little bit healthier.
He's always banged up.
But yeah,
these days.
What is he? He was in the same draft class as Travis Kelce. I think he's just a little bit younger. Maybe he might be like 33.
That's pretty old for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I was thinking they brought in DeAndre. Is that all Baltimore's really done?
Well, it says right there they re-signed their tackle.
Yeah, they got Ronnie Stanley back and honestly, they didn't really break the bank on him. Kansas City was kind of interested, and I think Kansas City and one other team actually offered him a little bit more money, and he chose to take less and just stay in Baltimore.
What a guy.
Yeah, I know it. And then they got fullback Patrick Ricard, who was already playing for them, I believe, re-signed, so I don't know that much there. Well, the Cincinnati took some defensive tackle from the Packers, apparently.
Have fun with that. Our front four couldn't get any pressure.
DJ Slayton, you have anything good to say there?
Not really. Like, probably an okay pickup. It's just, I know their front four, Packers front four, struggled real bad last year. They couldn't get pressure on anybody with four. So, if he was, I don't know how often he was playing
or what.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that he was a part of, but I know he was usually in. Like, he had a fair amount of plays. I'm not sure if he was a starter all the time.
Yeah. Cincinnati brings in some defensive linebacking help. I mean, TJ Slayton, who we were talking about, Oren Burks, an Eagles linebacker. I don't really know much about him. I don't really know B.J. Hill. But they did bring Samaje Perine back, which I don't know. I mean, that's good for him. He's, I guess, familiar with that offense because he was there for a number of years. But they're, like we were talking about earlier, their biggest so far free agency was getting T. Higgins and Jamar Chase done simultaneously. And Jamar Chase is now the highest paid non-quarterback, and T. Higgins is the highest paid
wide receiver too. I've seen so many things about this is how an 8-year-old makes their Madden team.
And they're still, like I said, they're still trying to get Trey Hendrickson signed. So.
Or like, what's the best defense is having a really good offense.
yeah, but they're gonna be kind of what they were this year: to score 40 points and lose.
I feel for that. I've been there.
Yeah,
been there, buddy.
Cleveland Browns have not done a whole lot, but made Myles Garrett wanted out, and then showed the big bucks, and he's staying for the long haul.
Good for him.
Yeah,
you're gonna be on a team that's not gonna win a Super Bowl. At least you're getting paid.
Yes. They also traded for Kenny Pickett and brought him in.
Yeah,
don't believe he'll be the starter. A lot of people are pretty sure they're going to end up with Russell Wilson. He's probably going to be the bridge guy.
Which would make sense because actually I just saw some stuff, which I know they're next. The Rodgers just had a visit with the Steelers
yesterday.
Yep.
Have not heard much. Some people thought that deal might get done sometime early in the morning if they were.
The sources I saw posting yesterday said that they're hearing it was a good meeting and they're going to stay in contact.
Yeah.
Which I know Rodgers and Tomlin have kind of talked about each other in the last few years about the respect they have
for one another. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, a lot of people think Russ will end up here because he's still cheap because largely the Broncos are still paying his salary. And they restructured some of Deshaun Watson's money too. So that means they'll just be paying him a little bit longer, but a little less this year.
Yeah.
So pretty wild. I don't know what Cleveland's going to do. Feel bad, so bad for Kevin Stefanski. Poor guy. And if not Russell Wilson, if Atlanta, this is another spot that if Atlanta would move Kirk Cousins, it could make sense because he used to play with
Yeah.
Stefanski, so
I'm surprised
play for Stefanski.
Steelers don't have DK listed there. He went there, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. There's a few things missing on these, which is a little bit disappointed.
Well, I think DK is their biggest signing, right? It's got to be.
Thus far, yeah.
There's been a lot of good ones about DK and George Pickens, too.
Yeah. I almost want to go grab a different list, but that's all right. I can remember. But yes, DK Metcalf's going to be there. They let, and we'll get to it in a minute, but they are keeping Jaylen Warren as their running back. And I was trying to think, it seemed like I thought I saw where they signed the old Packers guy, Dylan.
No, he
did.
went to Philly.
He went to Philly?
I'm pretty sure he did, man.
Interesting.
Because they were talking about, because he was called Quadzilla in Green Bay. He's huge, squats a ton, and they were talking about him being part of the tush push. The Packers also just proposed a ban.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that. There's a couple rules I want to talk about, actually, too.
I read more into it, too, and we've talked about it. But, I mean, while we're searching, we can, I guess, talk about
No, don't
that.
do it.
I guess we'll get
Yep,
there.
New
Yeah,
Eagle, you nailed it.
he went to Philly, for sure.
Yeah. But, yeah, they bring in DK Metcalf. That's good. I mean, if you're trying to get Aaron Rodgers. And then they already had Pickens. And Pat Freiermuth's not a bad tight end. And their defense or their offensive line's really not too bad either. So,
if Rodgers is going to go anywhere, Pittsburgh's probably the best fit, honestly,
Yeah.
like, with what's left.
Mm-hmm.
But I've talked about it before. I'd be fine with him just kind of hanging it up.
well,
I mean,
back to waiting on the decision. We're always just waiting on that decision. with
hey,
that
he was
guy.
taking taking long strolls on the beach the other day, contemplating it.
My bad. The fuck. Did you see what Cam Hayward said?
No,
He's just basically like, you know what? I'm tired of this. You either want to play here or you don't. I don't really understand why we're, doing this whole thing. It's just,
yeah, it'll be
figure it
funny if
out
he
with
goes
whoever
there,
plays.
because then Ryan Clark will be forced to talk about him more, and Ryan Clark fucking hates him. But he also threw a touchdown on Ryan Clark in the Super Bowl. But he's always bitching about him.
Yeah.
So it'd be funny if he goes and plays for the Steelers. Like Ryan Clark has to talk about him even more.
Did Jair Alexander get traded?
I don't think he's gonna end up back. It sounds like both sides want to part ways.
Yeah.
Dude, he's got a fucking pretty top tier contract. When he got it, it was the highest for a cornerback.
Oh,
And he's
old
played
Stingley blew that son of a bitch out of the water.
Huh?
Said Stingley blew that out of the
Oh,
water.
well, I'm just saying, at the time when he got it.
Yeah.
But the dude's been fucking hurt every year since then. He's played half the games. When he's fully healthy, he's an all-pro. But and then he's also kind of getting an ego now and starting to do shit that he just wants to do.
Yeah.
Making himself a captain for one of the games a couple years ago. Got suspended for that.
Hey, if there's a position you want, you got to take it. That's what they always say.
You got to go after the job you want. No, he fucking went out for the coin toss and everything. It was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can. I've got a few things for that for the Packers. When
Packers,
we get there,
yeah.
But yeah, there's stuff happening there.
Houston's a little head scratching what they're doing. They now, granted, they got quite a few picks, but they let their offensive line was not very good, and they let Laramie Tunsil go to the Commanders again for a decent haul of picks. I'm not arguing that, but it's a little head scratching what Houston's kind of doing because they need to fix offensive line, and they've done really nothing that I've seen that would suggest that they're fixing the offensive line. They traded for Christian Kirk away from Jacksonville, which might be okay. I guess maybe that's how they're trying to. Maybe that signals they're not at all interested in Stephon Diggs again this year. Seems like that would be kind of that same role. Although I think Stephon Diggs theoretically would be better than Christian Kirk, but they do that, and then they also traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles, which is interesting.
Depends what they gave up for him. I don't. Do you know what they gave up for him?
I do not remember that off the top of my head. I don't recall it being anything ridiculous.
It's probably that in itself is probably a solid move.
Yeah.
If they didn't give up, like I said, a ton.
Yup. We talked
quarterback situation here.
Yeah, we talked about, the old Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones dilemma that they're going to be in. Probably going to start with Anthony Richardson, and probably by week 5 or 6, it'll be Daniel Jones getting trotted out there. But we'll see what happens. They did grab Charvarius Ward, former Chief, then Niner, so that should be good. And they got Cameron Bynum, and I cannot remember where the hell Cameron Bynum was before that as a safety, but they're bolstering that defense. And like I said, they hired Lou Anarumo, and I think that's a really good defensive hiring. I think he probably can have that defense playing pretty well. Oh, Jacksonville. Let's see. What have they done?
I don't recognize any of those names.
I know Eric Murray. I think he was in Kansas City at one time quite a while ago, safety. But they have just been kind of shedding players. I don't know. They're pretty much rebuilding, I feel like, again. So I don't know. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. The Tennessee Titans, yeah, so this is their big one. Dre
Greenlaw.
They did get Dre Greenlaw?
Yeah. He tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. They signed him for not ridiculous money, but like he, tore his Achilles and then didn't hardly play last year. So you wonder how that's going to work out. But they also went and got left tackle, which they needed to address, and they grabbed the Steelers' Dan Moore for $82 million for 4 years. And most people feel like that's pretty big overpay. I know that some people have linked them to Kansas City, but Kansas City was like, we're not paying Dan Moore that kind of money. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it works. And Pittsburgh didn't even try to keep him. So, I think Dan Moore's by no means a bad tackle, but I don't know that he's an $82 million tackle either. But sometimes that happens. No, Dre Greenlaw went to Denver.
Well, see, once you went back to Dan Moore, I realized you were still talking about the Titans.
Yeah. So
I was looking at the Broncos. So
yes. So this is so.
Dre Greenlaw went to the Broncos.
So that could make sense if he really does recover. That's a pretty good signing. And then they got Hufanga, who's been kind of banged up, but has been a good player from the 49ers. Speaking of people jettison players, the 49ers been doing that too.
Mm-hmm. Sure have.
But Denver had a decent defense last year. They struggled with real contenders in big games, but they had a decent defense. And oh my God, I like their defensive coordinator a lot, who was their head coach for a little bit. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Oh God,
I don't know.
Oh, he was at Miami. Then he was the head coach of Denver for a little bit. Gosh, that makes me mad. All I can think of is that Evero guy, and he's the one who came in whenever they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Oh gosh. Anyway, but they did add some pieces for that guy to have to put to make their defense a little bit better. So that's pretty slick. The Chiefs. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but they brought back Hollywood Brown. They just recently brought back Charles Omenihu, which is good. Add depth.
Travis coming back.
Travis is going to come back for one more year. He's going to play on that same deal. I was trying to think who else I was trying to think some other. Oh, Kareem Hunt. They got Kareem Hunt back. They signed him back for another year.
He's done kicking ladies.
Yes. And they added Jalen Moore, who was Trent Williams' backup, so that's exciting. They did not way overpay for this guy either. It's just $15 million a year for 2 years, and that's not crazy. They can get out from under it next year if they have to, if he's not particularly great.
No, it sounds like they're set up pretty good again. I don't know about the defensive side. I mean, you'd know more than I would who's due for contracts, who they might lose, but sounds like they're set up fairly solid again.
They re-signed Nick Bolton to. Some people think it's an overpay. It might be. I don't know. They did let Justin Reed go. They did not re-sign him. He's now down with Tyrann Mathieu in the Saints.
Okay.
Because there's the whole pipeline of San Francisco to Kansas City and then Kansas City to the Saints. That's the big pipeline that's been going on for years and years and years for whatever reason. Am pretty excited about Christian Fulton, who they grabbed from the Chargers as their cornerback. He is going to allow them to probably let Trent McDuffie move around on the field more and not just be stuck on the outside. They can get him back in the slot. And also put him outside in base packages as well. So it just Christian Fulton is a good defensive back. Chargers, he kind of dropped off a little bit at the end of the year with the Chargers. A lot of people say it's because they kind of switched to a defensive scheme that doesn't work for him. He's a really good and really built for press man, and the Chargers weren't doing a lot of that the second half of the year. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's a good signing. Juju Smith-Schuster comes back again for another year. But they have the long and short of Kansas City is they've really kind of went out in free agency and made it so that they can just kind of draft whatever is best available for them. I feel like they kind of have depth kind of figured out, and then they can kind of go into the draft and look for who's best available. Who did the Raiders bring back in? Oh, Geno Smith. I think that's pretty smart. Tells you a lot about what Pete Carroll thinks about his former quarterbacks. He clearly likes Geno Smith a little bit better than Russ, because a lot of people thought maybe he was going to bring Russ in. Instead, he goes and they traded for Geno Smith, which is good, I think, because, again, they need solid consistency at pretty much all their positions, including coaching. Geno should provide that for them. And they did grab Jeremy Chin from the Commanders, who was also originally a Panther. And Jeremy Chin played well at times last year and then struggled at times, but pretty slick. I was trying to think if the Raiders had brought really anybody in splashy.
Geno Smith is the only one I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with the other two guys.
The Chargers let J.K. Dobbins, I believe, go, and then are trying to replace him with Najee Harris, which I'm not real sure what to make of that. They did get Khalil Mack re-signed. We talked about they let Joey Bosa go. Christian Fulton obviously left and went to the Chiefs. Did they let Asante Samuel go?
No idea.
You are not helping me here.
I'm really not. So there's in free agency, unless it's the big signings, I'm just not familiar because there's so many things moving around.
I know there's a lot. Dallas, I felt like spent all their time just re-signing people that they had already drafted for the most part. They clearly think that they're going to address in the draft. Believe they'll be taking a running back probably pretty early is my guess.
I wouldn't be surprised.
New York Giants are kind of still waiting around. They need to figure out their quarterback. I'm not going to stop there and talk about the Giants. The Eagles re-signed a lot of people. Zach Bond was a big re-signing. Defensive lineman. Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, along with defensive back Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers, the former Eagles who have new teams, so they lost those folks. They got Zach Bond. I was trying to think, and we talked about they got A.J. Dillon.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was...
That's okay. He tends to trip and be knocked over pretty easily, which is crazy for as big as he is. It could be like 3rd and 2.
It's easy to get the cart in front of the horse.
3rd and 2, and he's going to get like 6 inches.
Yeah.
But, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll be better with the Eagles.
Yeah, the Commanders are making some moves.
Debo. Debo's their big one that I know about.
Well, they got Debo, and they also traded for Laramie Tunsil from the Texans. We talked about that on the Texans, but that's a pretty big move. They also, I know there's a couple more interesting ones that they got. They have not been messing around though. They've been kind of going out and spending some of that money that they got to try to make a run at it while Jaden Daniels is still a rookie. The Bears pick up Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, and Drew Dahlman, all offensive line, like we were talking about before, working on getting that right. And then they grab Grady Jarrett, who at this point in his career is probably a rotational piece, but he's a good guy to have on your team and rotating in. And the Colts defensive end, I'm going to butcher this so badly, but Deo Odiengbo, it's probably way off, from the Colts. The Lions.
I haven't heard anything out of them.
They haven't been doing a lot. They did grab DJ Reed, who is a nice defensive back, who was playing opposite of the old Sauce Gardner in the Jets. DJ Reed's a pretty solid. I mean, he's not like amazing, but he's a solid defensive back, so that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
For them. I haven't heard a whole lot about what Detroit's been doing either, really. All right, here you go, Packers. Here you go. Your time to shine.
Well, I know they got Aaron Banks.
They got Aaron Banks.
They're losing, not really losing. They're letting Josh Myers go, which is their center. So they're going to have to probably move like Elton Jenkins to center. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if he's ever played center. He's a solid lineman. He's probably one of our best linemen. They drafted Jordan Morgan with their highest pick last year, and he didn't really play, which, I mean, that's fair. He was a rookie, but he's going to have to be a bigger piece this year, too. Overall, man, like, their line was solid. I forget exactly where they were ranked, but I don't remember there being a lot of issues with the line. I mean, Josh Jacobs had a hell of a year, so the line had to have been decent. Other than that, though, they brought in McCole Hardman, and then they brought in a defensive back. But Nate Hobbs, that's who it was.
There he is, yeah. From the Raiders.
I think that was that wasn't their first signing, because I think they got Aaron Banks first, but they got him. There is a lot of talk of letting Jair Alexander go.
And they got McCole Hardman. We talked about that on the way up the stairs. So
I think that's just a 1 year.
Super Bowl winning.
Yeah, Super Bowl winning.
He's won more Super Bowls than Aaron Rodgers.
Well, he is fast, and I knew that they're not, like, Watson's not going to be back until probably November, maybe. So they need a deep threat, and I don't really know if they were going to draft one or sign one in free agency. They'll probably draft some receivers once they get to the second or third round. I was really wanting them to try to get Devontae.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think they could have afforded him. They've got money to work with. And I don't think Jordan would have been like Aaron and make that his priority to throw to him no matter what, which the last few years those guys were together in Green Bay, and you saw it with them together in the Jets this year. That's the only person Aaron will throw to. Like, he'll just force it to him.
Yeah.
And that kind of was the downfall of the Packers era with him, at least that last year. They were together, but I think he would have been good in this current system. He would have been a good veteran to kind of draw a lot of attention off those younger guys. Dude, the most experienced receivers they have are Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson.
Yeah.
And they're third-year players, fourth-year players.
Yep.
So it's really all I got there. We'll see what happens to the draft. They usually do draft fairly well.
Yeah, and develop well.
The D-line needs a lot of work. So they need more out of they got a guy out of Iowa. His name's blanking for me right now, but he's a big dude. They need more out of him. This will be his third year.
Yep. Gotcha. Moving on to the Vikings, who actually have kind of been making quite a few moves. They bring in Jonathan Allen from the Commanders and an offensive lineman, Will Freeze, who I want to say is a guard, but I cannot remember off the top of my head, from the Colts. Ryan Kelly, and then Isaiah Rodgers from Philly. They also did get Aaron Jones re-signed. A lot of thoughts
that's
that
a solid,
he might go somewhere else.
That's a solid move.
To split time with him, they brought in Jordan Mason from the Niners, who is not like a great receiving back, I don't believe, by any stretch of the imagination, but he is a solid.
Well, I mean, let's just be real here. Aaron Jones is getting older. I think he's, I forget his exact age, but he's going to be turning 30. For running backs, I know that sounds ridiculous, say older, but for running backs, like,
it is.
Their bodies go through a lot. I still think he can play. He can for sure play. Keeping him was great, but giving him a good number two, like, he's always had a solid number two. It was Jamal Williams for a while, who's had success with Detroit, who's had some success with the Saints. It was A.J. Dillon for a bit. So he's always had like a solid other running back with him. Yeah, I think he's only going to be better for that.
I think pairing him with Jordan Mason is pretty stellar. And then it kind of looks like they're probably just going the J.J. McCarthy route. It seems like they're not really in on any other veteran quarterbacks to kind of bridge just in case. You know, obviously we'll talk about Sam Darnold in a minute. But it seems like they think J.J. is going to be ready. I mean, they might get lucky and grab somebody if they have to last minute, but...
Well, I know there was that brief talk of Rodgers considering the Vikings, which would have just been...
interesting, yeah.
Would have been hilarious to just follow that path. But I don't know if they have faith in J.J. They drafted him immediately, so I don't know.
Yep. Atlanta still hanging on to Kirk, as we have talked about briefly. Might just keep him as a really expensive backup. Most people don't like to do that, but you're going to have to eat some money if you let him go. be interesting to see. Somebody might be willing to trade for him, if somebody gets hurt or they're getting close to having to start the season and need a quarterback. But they bring in Leonard Floyd from the 49ers. I don't feel like Atlanta's made a whole ton of moves that I can think of.
I haven't heard anything.
So, I don't know. I'm going to spend a lot of time on Atlanta. Carolina did get Kansas City, and they kind of – I'll be honest with you, this is great for Tershawn Wharton, defensive lineman. A lot of Chiefs fans wanted him back, but, dude, Carolina paid that guy a lot of money. And good for him, but I think that's probably another overpay. Maybe not. We'll see. He was really coming on, but there's no way Kansas City was going to pay him that. That's pretty good money.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who else was interesting that they brought in? Nobody really. I'm not going to spend too much time on Carolina. The Saints, we talked about, they added Justin Reed, and they re-signed Chase Young, which is kind of surprising. A lot of people thought they might have let Chase Young go. They did get Cam Jordan to stay on a restructured deal, too, to lower his cap hit. But that's just another one of those aging players that, Cam Jordan's great, but he's costing you so much money, and the production's just not there anymore. So, whatever. This is all back to, I think, they got another year or two of really getting rid of some of these older players at high cap hits
and
before they can truly.
Very rarely do those players get cheaper as their play declines.
Right.
They still want that money.
Yeah, until they have to sit in free agency for a while.
Yeah.
The Bucks so far brought in Hassan Reddick, which is pretty exciting. Who did he ever play down for the Jets last year? I'm trying to remember if he ever did. I don't know if he did. They did get Chris Godwin re-signed. A lot of people thought he would be on the move. Levante David. Yeah, they haven't really made any huge moves that I can think of other than Hassan Reddick. So, and of course they're going to have to replace Liam Cohen. We've kind of touched on the fact that he's gone. Arizona Cardinals, not wasting time there. Haven't heard much. Jacoby Brissett and Zay Flowers. The Rams, though, do move on from
make
Cooper
a move.
Kupp and then bring in Devontae Adams,
Yeah,
which is pretty
that's where he went, which I wouldn't have been upset with Cooper going to Green Bay either, but I think he got more than what Green Bay was going to give.
Yeah.
I think he got a pretty good deal.
Seattle paid him pretty well.
What they did.
Which is, and we can get to Seattle here in just a minute, but it's kind of interesting. But it is kind of interesting they just move on from Cooper Kupp and then grab Devontae Adams. Could be really good with Matt Stafford. And of course, there was the will they, won't they with Matt Stafford, and they did get that deal.
Yeah,
so.
I think he'll be good with Stafford. Stafford's fairly similar to Rodgers. He's got a big arm. Accuracy is probably not quite the same as Rodgers, but and I think I've said it on here a few times. Rodgers is always very complimentary and outspoken about Stafford's talents and how he never got the credit he should have gotten.
Did you by chance listen to Jason and Travis's interview with Matt Stafford?
I've heard pieces of it.
That whole thing is worth listening to.
Oh, I bet it's a good one for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty entertaining.
I bet it's a good one for sure. I did see the clip. They asked him about playing quarterback for arguably the two greatest wide receiver seasons ever. He was it's great, two completely different styles, but
yeah, it was obviously Megatron. Who was the other one? Why am I
Cooper Kupp with a triple crown?
Oh yeah. He did talk in there briefly. I don't know how much I want to give away to you. He did talk in there briefly about the reason he had to come up with the no-look passes is because he had to still get the ball to Calvin Johnson, and he was double covered a lot. So he's like, I still got to get it to the guy. So I started thinking maybe I can find ways to move.
Yeah, I remember specifically I was watching the McAfee show one day, and of course it was right after Mahomes had done one of those no-lookers, and it was the greatest thing ever to everybody. And he's like, there's a guy in Detroit that's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
So
the Niners again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Niners. They're just letting people go.
Cleaning house.
They're going to get Brock Purdy paid, and they're going to rebuild at the end.
Good.
Of the
I'm
day.
glad their window's done for now.
Now, let's see.
I say that and watch them go to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, they did grab Demarcus Robinson from the Rams, which is kind of surprising. I figured they were going to hold on to him. But yeah, they're very clearly rebuilding. It kind of looks like they're going to have to keep.
You know what? That's what
Christian
happens.
McCaffrey too. There was some talk like they might move him, but I don't think you can get anything for him, and his contract's kind of high.
That's what you get for having 6 or 7 All Pros and then giving them all a ton of money.
Yeah. And then and then
Hope your
just
window was fun.
lose your lose a couple NFC championships, a couple Super Bowls, and then have to start over again. So
Shanahan's a good coach. They'll be back. Might take a year or two to kind of get everything fine tuned again.
Yeah, you gotta wonder if at some point Shanahan's not gonna need to maybe refresh somewhere though. Maybe not.
Maybe that's totally
Maybe they'll just
possible.
hold on to him, but it could be one of those situations that you get into with like Andy Reid in Philly, or some people are starting to say maybe Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh's kind of that same way, or you just kind of
Maybe, but I think that's totally different with Shanahan. Shanahan's been consistently taking them to NFC championships and a couple Super Bowls. Like he's still getting them deep in the playoffs.
Well, now relatively
Like-
consistency. It's like an every once or 2 years thing though. Like it's like they'll
They've
have a
been
really
making-
good year and then they won't be great for a couple of years. Now, granted, a lot of it's because of injury.
Yeah,
but
they got decimated by
last year was
injuries.
because of injuries too. It just
I don't know. I think that's out of Kyle's hands, and when he's had a healthy team, he's taken them
right, yeah. They
pretty
just-
much towards the end. And I don't know. I've always been
Don't
like,
have a
if
lot
you
of
start
depth.
getting picky at that point, like I think I'd rather lose NFC championships every year than like struggle to make the playoffs with a new coach.
Mhm. No, I get it. It's easy to get a lot worse for sure. It's just you wonder if it's not going to. But are you have you plateaued?
I mean, that's a fair question too. I guess if he gets a couple more years and same thing happens, like, but that's what happened. Like I said, Rodgers gets a lot of shit for like only making it to one Super Bowl. The dude went to like 5 NFC championships. Like my life watching him and his career with the Packers, like I'm fine with making it that far pretty consistently.
Right.
Like
Yeah, you're watching football through
I
the
think
whole
they-
year at least. Yeah.
yeah, and I think people just kind of get spoiled. I guess that's probably the best word when you could have coaches who just really
Well,
fucking suck.
You kind of. It's just like no matter what no matter what your floor is, you always want the ceiling to be higher
Yeah,
than the floor.
yeah,
I mean,
for
you can't
sure.
help it. So like when you're really shitty, it's like I just want to make the playoffs.
Or-
and then you start making the playoffs for a couple years, like I just want to get to a championship game. And
Or-
then once you do that, it's like I gotta get to
Yeah,
the
or like
Super Bowl.
the conversation with Mike McCarthy was a great example too. Like, dude gives you 3 like 12-5 seasons in a row, and you're like, nope, we're done. He fucking sucks.
Yeah.
You kicked ass pretty much all year. Yeah, I get it sucks probably getting your ass kicked in the first round of the playoffs, but
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
where Kansas City was forever. If they made it, it was always getting the shit kicked out of you in the first round of the playoffs.
I've been there.
typically.
I've been there too.
Yeah. And then last but not least, Seattle, who we've kind of touched on a little bit, but they bring in Sam Darnold, which is not a bad move at all, I don't think, for them.
Depending on if he can,
Yeah,
I think
but
that's a huge thing. If Kevin, fucking Vikings coach is it O'Connell,
Mhm.
yeah, was it his system that Sam Darnold excelled in, or did Sam Darnold just finally find his mojo? Like
We're gonna
you
find
take him
It's-
out, yeah.
The truth is, it's probably a little bit of both, but can it work the same in Seattle as it did in Minnesota? The combination, don't know.
It's a huge question. We've seen him play like that in one system.
Yeah. But the nice thing about him is like his deal is realistically $37 million for 1 year, and then next year they would only owe him like 17, but they could stomach that if they have to get out from
Yeah.
under it. So, I mean, it's a decent overall deal for 2 years, but at the same time, you're kind of really only married to him
Yeah.
for 1 year, so that's not too bad for
I
him.
mean, I hope he does well. It was great to see him perform like he did last year.
Yeah. Now, I do think it's probably worth note that I don't know if Seattle's line is probably similar to really what Minnesota's was, because Minnesota's was pretty average. I would say Seattle's is around average too, but he is not going to have the wide receiving weapons.
No, sir.
That's a little. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba's a decent wide receiver, and you'll have to see what is left in the tank for Cooper Kupp. But they most certainly are not Jordan Addison or
Justin Jefferson.
Justin
There's-
Jefferson.
Yeah. It's
So,
major downgrade.
yeah.
But
So it'll be interesting to see. But I do like what Seattle is doing, though, because I think at some point last year, in the middle of the season, where it was like, will they, won't they get into the playoffs? It was just like, I think they've done everything they can with this team, and it is time to start making some retooling.
yeah, you had
rebuilding.
made that comment with Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad he said the career resurgence he has in Seattle, but I think we've kind of seen like what he is.
Mhm.
Like he's a solid solid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ceiling, I guess.
Any other thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No,
That
I
was a
think
quick hour, wasn't it?
yeah, it's just kind of what's available now.
Well,
We'll find out more
there'll be
after the
more
draft.
after the draft, but the draft
Yep.
is still, what, a month almost exactly from today, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right, buddy. Well, maybe we'll touch base after the draft. If we do that, we'll probably just talk about our own teams. I don't know how much I'm going to spend on other teams. But
Yeah, I don't care about that.
all right. Well, bye.